Treacy Sheehan was getting ready for a night out when police knocked on her door. The Sydney apartment building she had called home for 4 years was in danger of collapsing, and Sheehan, her young son, and her fellow residents of the 131-unit apartment block would have to leave immediately. Watch the video above. Mascot Towers started cracking years ago. Watch the latest news on Channel 7 or stream for free on 7+. She scrambled to gather her belongings and moved into a hotel that night. "It was all a big mess," she told 7news.com.au. "I moved 5 times in the first year. It's been a nightmare." 3 years on from that fateful 2019 night, Sheehan and her fellow residents are still struggling, despite an out-of-court settlement earlier this year. She and her 5-year-old son can't live in the apartment that she spent years saving for, she can't sell it, and she is still forced to fork out thousands each month in bills. After assuming she had secured a stable home in which to raise a child, Sheehan is now struggling to make ends meet during Australia's nightmare rental crisis. "Now I'm broke," Sheehan, who works as a recruiter, said. "I still don't know where I'll be in 12 months. Cracks in a perfect picture." Sheehan, who is now 53, had her son Eamon later in life. She wanted to earn enough so that he could have a comfortable upbringing. In 2013, she bought an apartment in Mascot Towers, which would become Eamon's first home, in the central Sydney suburb of Mascot. By then, the building, which was just a few years old, already had cracks and some signs of structural damage, she says. It was about to get a lot worse. One day in 2018, when Sheehan was working from home with Eamon, she felt her building shake. In April 2019, significant structural cracks were identified in transfer beams at Mascot Towers, and in June, the cracks had got so bad that Fire and Rescue NSW ordered the building to be evacuated, according to a court document. After Sheehan was forced to evacuate in 2019 alongside other residents, she was without a home, and in a completely different financial position. "I had established a good life and certainly did not expect to lose my financial status through no fault of my own," she said. "It's very distressing for a homeowner to not know where they'll be. To be halfway through my life and not know. It's very upsetting. I had it all planned out. I was going to give my son a private school tuition, everything." Evacuated into a housing crisis. By the time Mascot Towers was evacuated in 2019, the developer had already gone into liquidation and the then 10-year-old building was outside statutory warranty. So the unit owners committee took legal action against Oland Developments. They alleged that the problems with Mascot Towers were the fault of the neighboring Peak Towers, claiming construction of the adjacent Peak Towers building caused underground instability. A confidential, out-of-court settlement with Oland Developments was reached in July 2022, the details of which cannot be disclosed. But Sheehan said she did not go into the proceedings with an expectation of adequate reimbursement for her losses. "It was never going to be sorted, it was just going to pay a portion of the debt that we had accumulated," she said. Even now, owners cannot sell their units individually or re-enter them until rectifications are made to the building. But the full cost of rectification works was estimated at around $38.5 million in May last year. "Fixing the building is an option, but we do not have the funds to cover it. We've already spent way too much. We've already spent $17 million at this point and interest is 12% because no banks will lend us the money," Sheehan said. At the same time, Sheehan and her fellow residents found themselves thrust into the pointy end of Australia's rental crisis. The latest domain rental vacancy rate report details crisis-level conditions in the NSW rental market, with a record low vacancy rate of 1.2% and a 50% drop in available rentals since this time last year. According to Sheehan, some of the owners are still looking for a permanent roof to put over their heads. "The housing crisis is so prolific," she said. "Never going to be sorted now." Based in St. Peters, Sheehan and her fellow residents are embarking upon another legal bid. They've lodged an application before the Supreme Court to terminate the building's strata scheme. If that's successful, it will allow the owners to sell off the towers as a single site to a developer. Selling the building to a developer would likely come at a massive loss to the owners. In 2019, pre-evacuation, they were offered 25% of what it was worth by a developer who wanted to remain confidential, Sheehan said. It's costing us, all of the owners, $5,600 per day to keep the strata scheme going, last we calculated, and that was before interest rates rose again. Sheehan estimates she personally owes about $4,000 a month in strata levies and mortgage repayments for the unit, but lately she has been unable to afford her strata levies, so those bills are accumulating until the building's eventual sale. I just can't afford it right now, she said. Everyone is in the same situation or worse. I mean, some people don't have mortgages but they're still going to lose their life savings. They're going to get very little for the unit. A fair trading assistance package was announced in July to provide rental support to the owners in need of accommodation. This package is funded by the NSW Rental Bond Board, which has legislative capacity to use its funding for residential financial assistance to rebuild consumer confidence in residential apartment buildings, a NSW Fair Trading spokesperson told 7 News. com.au. Sheehan says this definitely helps by alleviating week-to-week pressure, but that it's not going to ease any of the ongoing pressure. The only way it could be sorted is if the government steps in and helps. She hopes the government will buy the building from the owners, but believes that isn't likely to happen because they don't want to set a precedent. The NSW Department of Planning and Environment told 7news.com. It was not aware of any such discussions and there are no current plans to purchase the building. For Sheehan, 3 years on, there's still no end in sight. She still has many of her things at the unit, with nowhere else to put it all, and no money left to pay for storage. I'm chasing money every week. We need serious help.